you've got the Saints going 5-12, missing the playoffs. I have them going 6-11, missing the playoffs. Talk to me about the Saints. Where are we here? I've said that this is a sneaky team for a top 5 draft pick this upcoming draft. 6-11, I don't think gets them a top 5 draft pick, but it'd probably be a top 10 draft pick. What do you think about this team overall? And then let's dig into your offensive MVP.
I'm a little worried because the first thing for me is the trenches, and we see a lot of question marks on the offensive line first. With you've got Talise Fuaga, the rookie, moving over to left tackle, where I don't think he played a single snap at Oregon State. He's
always right tackle.
He was always a right tackle. You have Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy on the inside. McCoy's a really good run blocker, but he kind of struggled in pass protection last year. It looks like they have Trevor Penning going at right tackle right now, flipping over from left tackle after struggling his first couple seasons. He's shown flashes in the run game, but not consistent pass protection. I'm worried about the pass protection for this team across the board and just what this looks like, because it was not great last year. To say the least, and Derek Carr is not a guy who's going to improvise and get outside the pocket and do a lot of those things right. And then they had one of the, quietly they have some big names, but they had one of the lowest graded defensive lines in the league too. Cam Jordan's starting to get up there in age.
Right.
Brian Brzee, their first round pick from last year, I did some nice things as a pass rusher, but really struggled in the run game, and they just have had a hard time just rebuilding the youth. I think on both sides. I think they've tried on the offensive line, and I don't know that McCoy's been better. I don't know that Ruiz has really hit it right guard like they wanted him to. Some of the younger guys on the defensive line have really taken a while to get going, and they're trying to patch it together. But I'm really worried about this team in the trenches, and then I'm kind of worried about just in general what we saw. I know Derek Carr was better down the stretch, but what we saw from him the first half of last year, and just kind of even, it was just a lot of dysfunction too, right? It just seemed like the vibe was off with this team. And you look at their wins last year, Trevor, I believe the only team with a winning record that they beat. Actually, I don't even remember if they had a winning record. I'm not sure that they beat a team with a winning record. I think their best win may have been the Bears, and that's when they were starting Tyson Bagent at that point when Justin Fields was hurt. Actually, no, they beat the Buccaneers once. That's what it was. Their one win against a team.
That's a divisional opponent, though.
Right.
You basically, those are coin flips anyway.
Yeah, they split those two games. So they beat the Buccaneers once. I believe that was their only win against a team with a winning record. So.
And that was week 17, so that was right near the end of the season as well, when you said Derek Carr was playing.
Yeah, he was definitely playing better down the stretch, which gives you some hope. But the baseline for me for this team in the trenches, and we've talked about a few teams in our predictions where I'm like, I'm a little worried in the trenches. It may be the Saints more than anyone that I'm worried about, because you've got, you do have a really good secondary to back end, and Demario Davis just carrying their front seven. But I'm concerned. There's some skill on this team. Alvin Kamara seems to not age. My offensive MVP is Chris Olave. I think very quietly, he's one of the best receivers in football, and an identical 82.9 receiving grade in each of his first 2 seasons in the NFL. That's really hard to pull off, honestly. And he's just a spectacular route runner, first of all, and great hands. He's just that chain mover, right? And over the last 2 years, a 95.5 intermediate receiving grade between 10 and 19 yards. That's second in the NFL behind Brandon Ayuk. So, look, Olave is a number 1 type guy that you want to build your offense around, right? And they're trying to find who's filling in that wide receiver 2 role. They never got Michael Thomas back. They've got this weird shuffle at tight end where it's like Taysom Hill's kind of a tight end, but he's also Taysom Hill. And, you've got Jawan Johnson there. Foster Moreau, Olave carries this passing game to me, along with Kamara taking all the checkdowns and doing what he does after the catch. He's to me their best offensive player, pretty clearly, and I think he's only going to get better as long as the situation around him gets better. But especially in that intermediate range, he's a really, really tough cover.
Yeah, I'm also worried about the trenches with this team on both sides of the ball. They got a lot of questions, and I think it's a reason why I think the wheels could fall off on the team. You look at the names on paper and you say, okay, the Saints are pretty good. They should compete. They got a lot of big name guys, a lot of guys who can perform well, but I just don't know if it's really going to all come together as a team. It certainly didn't last year, and I don't have as much faith for it to this year. We shall see. The MVP has to be Derek Carr. You mentioned he struggled early, and unfortunately, it's a new offensive coordinator again for him. So, okay, is the chemistry going to take a little bit of time once again for him? But I do have an area where I'm at least encouraged a little bit here. When it comes to Derek Carr, the Saints were second to last in the NFL in total play action plays called. Okay, they just did not have a lot of play action plays that were called last year. 98. They only had 98 play action plays the entire season. But they were 14th, so they were top half of the league in PFF passing grade when going to play action. Niners offensive coordinator, so their new offensive coordinator is Clint Kubiak, and he was with the 49ers last year as the quarterback's coach and sort of like offensive, like pass game coordinator, if you will. The Niners weren't much better than the Saints. They were 27th in total play action calls. I think they were at 133, but they were number one in the league in PFF passing grade when going to play action. So this is an area where not only do I think the Saints can run more play action, I think they can be even better when executing it, because it was such a mainstay of what made Brock Purdy as successful as he was, keeping the defense honest in all facets when you look at Clint Kubiak's time in San Francisco. So I think he's going to try to take that to the Saints, and I think it's going to be a little bit more play action that we saw from them compared to last year, and I think that will help this team overall, but it's just all on Derek Carr's shoulders. It has to be. Defensive MVP. Mine is Demario Davis. I'll just say that because you already brought up his name. I mean, he is truly the centerpiece of that entire defense. 89.6 overall grade in 2023. That was the second highest of his career. Dalton, he's 34 years old. I mean, this man is ageless. Demario Davis has been doing this for so long, and last year was the second highest overall grade of his career. Incredible what he was able to do. 7th straight season of an overall grade of 70 or above. He's just been doing it for so long. Unfortunately, you can only play linebacker for so long, so I don't know when that drop-off's coming, but the Saints better pray that it's not this year, because they still need that guy more than ever. So to me, he has to be that defensive MVP, because all of the other improvements that we'd like to see, it only works if Demario Davis is still who he's been over the last couple of years.
Yeah, he's incredible, and 9 out of 10 times I would take him. I was letting you take Davis this time because there's another guy behind him who you talk about, heart and soul guy, and it's weird that I believe he's entering his 12th year in the NFL. Tyrann Mathieu at safety, man, the honey badger. He is still, if you forgot about this guy, he left Kansas City and you're like, oh wait, Tyrann Mathieu's still playing. He is still spectacular, Trevor. You talk about in the box, back free, in the slot, still doing all of the same things that he's done since way back in his days at LSU, other than he doesn't return punts anymore. But everything on defense, he is spectacular. Trevor, I didn't know until doing notes for this show, over the last 2 years, his 2 years in New Orleans, he leads all NFL safeties with a 92 coverage grade. He's still one of the best players in coverage in the NFL.
That's awesome.
And what it's become now is, I mean, he was an elite athlete, and obviously some of that goes away as he aged towards your 12th season. But he is so, I don't know that he ever got enough credit for how smart a football player he is, right? And just the incredible football IQ that he's always had since way back in his college days, playing in the slot. Now, gets to the NFL, playing safety, slot, Cardinals, Chiefs, different teams, Saints. I'm probably losing track of all the teams he's played for. And he just continues to get it done at a superstar level. I believe he's got 34 career interceptions. Tyrann Mathieu last year, the Saints had real questions a couple years ago after they lost Marcus Williams in free agency to Baltimore. And Mathieu comes in there, and it's just seamless. And he just holds the entire secondary together. The Saints are really, really good at corner, but I didn't even realize, still doing notes, I knew he was good. I didn't know he was still this good. And to still be one of the best safeties in football heading into your 12th season, and just to be rock solid as really the guy who holds this secondary together in the middle, it's really incredible. I think, tell you what, the legacy of Tyrann Mathieu after he retires is going to be a really interesting one, because between his days at LSU when he was just an absolute superstar and just how well he's produced for so many years in the NFL.
No, that's what I was going to bring up, is that over the last decade plus, he's been one of the most fun football players to watch, going back to his LSU days. And he's been a mainstay. And the list of incredible, impactful, fun NFL players to watch, again, like over the last 10 years, I mean, Tyrann Mathieu's name has been near the very top for almost all of it. My breakout player, I'm going to go with wide receiver A.T. Perry. You talked about Chris Olave and how great he is as a wide receiver one. I think that he is a stud for them at the very top of that depth chart. They've got Rashid Shaheed as well, who I won't say too much on because I know you're going to talk about him in a second. But I think that A.T. Perry is kind of going to be a breakout guy as that third receiver for that group. 69.8 receiving grade on 68 snaps this preseason. He had 3 touchdowns in his last 3 games last year, 84.0 receiving grade in his final game of 2023. He wasn't even in the starting lineup for basically the first half of the season. He was barely playing. I think he was inactive for the first half of the season. So he started to get in the lineup second half of the season and really started to come on strong as the year ended. They've gotten him involved throughout the preseason, which to me tells me they're warming him up to make sure that he's ready to contribute in the regular season as well. So A.T. Perry, somebody that was a unique player in Wake Forest's offense, just a crap ton of yards, a crap ton of touchdowns, just because it was sort of a weird offense. And, I remember watching his tape and I was like, man, I'm a fan of his. And, the big, long body and the frame and how he gets so vertical and how comfortable he is as a vertical threat. And some people were like, yeah, but he doesn't separate super well. And I could see that as well. But he produced in college and it looks like he's producing in the NFL too. And I think we're going to see more of that here with New Orleans. So who do you got as your breakout player?
We're going to stay at that same position, and the theme is finding guys that can help Chris Olave create some space out there. I'm going with Rashid Shaheed. This guy's a blazer. He's an absolute blazer. You talk about a deep threat. You talk about a punt returner. He's a dynamic returner, 69.4 receiving grade last year, 15.6 yards per reception is a high number, and I think that's something that can stick for him or maybe even increase. A 99.9 deep grade, a perfect deep grade in each of his first 2 seasons in the NFL. He is just one of those guys who's faster than everybody else on the field, right? And there's too many times I feel like in the last probably year and a half where I was like, man, like I'm watching the Saints game and I go, just give him the ball more. Just find Shaheed any way to get the ball because his feet, he's lightning, man. Honestly, you talk about, again, punt return, deep ball, definitely could take some screens to the house. No question. I would get him some more screen work, anything. Any way to get this guy the ball, honestly. End arounds, I don't care. His feet on that turf in the Superdome, that's a weapon. And you talk about opening things up for Olave in the intermediate game. What Shaheed can do in the deep game, you constantly have to be aware of him. If you're in a single high look, you're deep free safety. If you're in a 2 high look, both of those guys, he's one of those speed threats. I think in the same way that we talk about, say, certain guys, just even if it's as a decoy some days, like just taking the top off. We talk about Xavier Worthy for the Chiefs, right? And we go, we'll see how many yards and all that stuff he has. But if nothing else, you just have to respect the speed. I think the more that they get the ball into Shaheed's hands, the better the Saints offense is going to be.
No, I completely agree with you. I think that he was somebody who I kind of felt like he broke out a little bit last year. And so, but I think it's a great call out because I think he could be even better this year. That game against the Colts last year where he had like 150 yards, he was unstoppable. And that just shows you, like you said, if you don't respect the deep speed, he'll absolutely burn you, and he can do it with just a couple of catches. So that's something that you always got to pay attention to. Best rookie has to be Talize Fuaga. It has to be, because if he is not the player they need him to be at left tackle, which you mentioned. First time he's playing left tackle, I don't really know what you have on this offensive line. There's no Teron Armstead there. Even Andres Pete is gone. Trevor Penning hasn't played well. Ryan Ramchick's out for the year. Like, this all of a sudden becomes one of the most worrisome offensive lines in the league of Talize Fuaga. And it's kind of unfair expectations to put on his shoulders, to be honest with you. But they have no choice at this point. He has to be reminiscent of what he was at Oregon State, because his PFF grades at Oregon State, all 3 years that he was there and contributing, were really good. I think he was in the high 80s his sophomore season. He was over elite, 90.6 grade, I believe was his overall grade last year. It's not going to be elite. We know it's not going to be elite, but he's got to be one of their best offensive linemen this year, or the Saints are in trouble. I liked Fuaga a lot. He was a top 15 player for me in the draft, so I've got a lot of faith in him. But moving from right tackle to left tackle, we'll see once regular season speed starts to become a regular thing for him. 66.6 preseason grade this past preseason. So to me, Dalton, he has to be their guy. He has to be one of their best offensive linemen this year, or they're in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. This is the easy pick, and I think where the adjustment could at least be a little bit easier for him is in the run game. He led all offensive linemen in college football last year in run blocking grade. He's simply, you could see it. He was the best run blocker in college football last year, and really, you could argue over the last 2 years. And I think something that makes it easier is Clint Kubiak being their offensive coordinator. You talked about all the play action stuff, and all of, if Clint Kubiak, just like his dad Gary, just like the entire Shanahan tree, if he's going to have a lot of zone run schemes in his offense and that's going to be the foundation, that's all they ran down there at Oregon State, honestly. And Fuaga he became the master of it. You could just see him mauling people, reaching off of the edge, getting to the second level, just hammering linebackers when he got up to it. Talise Fuaga as a linebacker from that perspective, well, that's one of the scariest players in football coming at you. So I do think there should be an easier adjustment in the run game if that's what the foundation of this run game is going to be. But yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be a question about the position switch and the fact that they so desperately need him. Really, you could argue they need him to be their best offensive lineman right away. Obviously, that's tough. That's a tough adjustment.
Right.
But they have to get between him and Trevor Penning on the right side. Their entire season, you could argue, hinges on these two guys.
I thought when you were using the words Talise Fuaga and linebacker, I thought you were saying, picture Talise Fuaga as a linebacker, and I was like, yeah, that's also terrifying.
Honestly, if he took off 30 to 40 pounds, he probably could.
He could probably do it.
He is a really good. He can move really well. He's a really good athlete for his size, and yeah, him getting on the second level in that zone game at Oregon State was one of the most fun things to watch in the country last year.